All right,
And action.
so we're talking about Christine Blasey Ford, Blasey. And
Blazing Blasey Ford.
so she claimed to have a charge, and Dianne Feinstein supposedly got a letter, and this is early on. So let me read you the letter because not everybody's had this letter, which I think is kind of interesting. So the letter reads as follows.
I didn't see the letter. Oh, good. I get
Well,
to read the letter.
I
Thank you.
found a copy. It's partially redacted, but I found a copy. This is supposedly the contents of the letter. How do you like that?
Well, let me guess. Was it released by Barsoomian?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. So, dear Senator Feinstein, I'm writing with information relevant in evaluating the current nominee of the Supreme Court. As a constituent, I expect you will maintain this as confidential until we have further opportunity to speak. Brett Kavanaugh physically and sexually assaulted me during high school in the early 1980s. He conducted these acts with the assistance of redacted. We know that to be Mark Judge, and I'll talk about him in a minute. Both were one of the...
We don't know. It's redacted.
Well, but that's what's come out elsewhere. Both were 1 or 2 years older than me and students at a local private school. And she was in the girls' school, they were in the guys' school, it's Catholic private school. The assault occurred in suburban Maryland area home at a gathering that included me and 4 others. Kavanaugh physically pushed me to the bedroom as I headed for a bathroom up a short stairwell from the living room. They locked the door and played music loud, precluding any successful attempt to yell for help. Kavanaugh was on top of me while laughing with Redacted, that's a guy, who periodically jumped onto Kavanaugh. So they're piling on. They both laughed as Kavanaugh tried to disrobe me in their highly inebriated state. With Kavanaugh's hand over my mouth, I feared he may inadvertently kill me. From across the room, a very drunken Redacted said mixed words to Kavanaugh, ranging from "go for it" to "stop." At one point, when Redacted jumped onto the bed, the weight of me was substantial. The pile toppled, and the two scrapped with each other. After a few attempts to get away, I was able to take the opportune moment to get up and run across to a hallway bathroom. I locked the bathroom door behind me. Both loudly stumbled down the stairwell, at which point other persons at the house were talking with them. I exited the bathroom and ran outside of the house and went home. I have not knowingly seen Kavanaugh since the assault. I did see Redacted once at the Redacted, where he was extremely uncomfortable seeing me. I have received medical treatment regarding the assault. On July 6th, I notified my local government representative who asked them how to proceed with sharing this information. It is upsetting to discuss sexual assault and its repercussions, yet I feel guilty and compelled as a citizen about the area of not saying anything. I am available to speak further should you wish to discuss. I am currently redacted and will be in redacted, in confidence, redacted. So she sent this several months ago.
Is there a date on it?
Well, it says on July 6th. No, there's no date on this. Oh yeah, July 30th. So the first thing is that Dianne Feinstein has sat on this since the end of July or 1st of August and is now 6-7 weeks later, and she's done nothing to put Blasey Ford into the tunnel, into the funnel to be a witness. And had she gotten a hold of Grassley and said, I have a possible opposition witness and I want a background check on it, at least Grassley would have had the opportunity to do that. So there are a couple of claims. The first one is, of course, that this is a sexual violation. I think it may or may not be. According to Maryland, it's not first-degree sexual assault. It's not a rape. It's not second degree because it obviously wasn't fully involved. If it's anything, it's unconsented sexual conduct, or that is a contact, a third-level crime, still a 10-year felony.
Wow.
But
Let me ask you a quick question before you roll.
Yeah.
She said she received medical treatment,
All right. So
medical attention. What
go
was
back.
that?
Yeah, let's go back to this. She has never, to anyone's knowledge, made any comment about this. She never turned this in, which would have been her first responsibility, to turn this into the state. It's not a federal offense. It's not an FBI offense. There's no cross state lines. She did not turn it into the Maryland authorities. And this is 35 years ago.
Medical treatment?
She did not get any medical treatment.
There was something in there, though, where she said she did not.
Oh, yeah, but you know what she did? Her medical treatment is counseling a few months ago.
A few months ago, so 37 years later, she gets counseling?
And so what you have to know is, obviously, and then she took a lie detector test.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. Well, pretty seriously, it is alleged she has taken a lie detector test. Now, let me tell you, let me say one thing about this. Everybody says, well, this is a crime and this is a felony. And there are even Democrats that are saying, which is wild, that even if he gets appointed, they are going to go into hearings to discuss whether or not he ought to be prosecuted for this offense. So as a former prosecutor, let me tell you a couple things I find as a weakness to it. The first one being that this, she claims, happened sometime while she was age 15. Now, she was age 15 from November of 1981 until or 1st of December of 1982. That's a 13-month span. If somebody said to you that you committed some kind of act of crime sometime within a year, it would not meet the smell test. It would not even you couldn't even get a file, you couldn't even prosecute, you couldn't file it. So she's born in November of 66.
But she doesn't say when the date of this is?
She does not say the date.
So it happened when she was 15. So she's narrowed it down to a 1-year period. I understand that.
Right. And I don't know what day in November she was born. So I have to go from 81 to 82.
Is it a crime to compile a false testimony, to make up a whole story like this?
Yeah, of course.
And in collusion with a coach?
Of course. Now,
okay.
Recognize that she does not want to be sworn. Okay?
Imagine that.
Yeah, she doesn't want to have sworn testimony. This kind of reminds me of Bush and Cheney coming in, holding each other's hand, talking about 9/11 15 years ago, and they do it in private and there's no sworn testimony.
And no transcript.
And she does not want to be cross-examined, and she does not want any lawyers present, and she does not want any controversy. And of course, she'd rather have this be private, and she'd like to put it off as long as she can.
And she doesn't want Kavanaugh there. And she wants Kavanaugh to testify first. So what the hell is he supposed to testify about?
So so this is a gulag archipelago kind of a deal. This is a soul.
The Spanish Inquisition.
Dershowitz
was on TV.
Because what they did in the gulag was they put you across the desk and he said, well, what did I do wrong? What am I supposed to defend myself for? And they said, you know you did something wrong. We're just going to keep you in jail until you tell us what it was. And that's what they're doing. They're going to say to him, if in fact he has to testify first, they're going to say, well, somebody claims that you committed sexual assault sometime in 1981 or 1982. Tell us about all those occasions when you did that.
Right. You remember where I said 2 videos ago something about Bolsheviks running free?
Exactly. So at the time that this allegedly occurred, Kavanaugh, who was born in February of 65, would have been 17. In other words, at the end of Christine's 15th year, in November of 82, Kavanaugh would still have been 17. So he's a minor.
So the best we can narrow it down to is a 1-year potential overlapping. It's absurd.
Now, we can't tell you who was the host. We can't tell you where the party occurred. She
Right.
apparently can describe some of what the grounds, the house looked like. And to the best of anybody's knowledge, it looks like a house that whose parents, another kid that looked a lot like Kavanaugh. So you've got an identity problem. The other part about this is, I mean, these guys.
How drunk was she?
Well, she doesn't say how drunk she is at all.
Nobody asked. What
But
other drugs did she take?
but in her yearbooks, they talk about partying. They talk about different games they played, and one of the games they played was who can get so drunk that they pass out or are not present. And
Did she win?
we don't know that, do we?
I saw it, and then I'm going to let you. You're on a roll, so I'm going to let you go. But I saw a picture today, and it was like on YouTube. I don't remember where the hell it was from, and it purported to be her when she was 15, essentially passed out on a picnic table with like beer bottles and whatnot around, wearing like a bikini bathing suit, laying face down.
Yeah, I think there's a picture with her with no top, and so
laying face down on the picnic table.
And the yearbooks have been removed from the internet since this all came up, as have her personal pages. There are also indications that she has problems as a professor, that she has problems with different people. Some people even call her scary. It's fairly clear, yeah, and have objections to how she taught as a professor. There are clear indications that her parents, that are the Blasey's, you have to pronounce this Blasey, I think, because it's Sasey, right? Blasey. But I think it's probably Blasey. So anyway, her dad has CIA links and corporations and tied in Maryland. Her grandfather probably has CIA links and is tied in Maryland. Does that mean that she was MK Ultra? Does that mean that she was emotionally modified as a child? Does that mean that she's displaced this? Does that mean she has multiple personalities? I mean, we have no way of knowing any of this stuff, and I don't mean to get off the table on it, but all right, so let's go to.
That's all important stuff to ask. This is why we have cross-examination.
Exactly, and I think I could do that fairly well. And so now,
I'm enjoying it already. This is great. Maybe you pronounce her name Blasey.
Blasey. All right, so interestingly enough, it looks to me like Blasey, Blazah, looked at the Maryland statute because it includes sexual contact, and then she's picked out 2 or 3 of the subsections.
Right.
So if you have consensual sex with a minor, you have no problem. You may have lots of problems, but you have no problem legally if you and the other young child are both of approximately the same age. So in Maryland, if the person's under 14 and you're more than 4 years older, or if they're 14 or 15 and you're over 21, then you've got, even if it's consensual, you have a problem.
Right.
Now, in this case, it's allegedly non-consensual, allegedly. And he didn't have a dangerous weapon, so that's one of the subsections.
Oh, was there sex involved? I thought they were just.
No, but it's sexual contact, and it would be charged as an attempt, right? Assuming that you could establish the seriousness of the attempt.
Okay.
In order to do that, in order to get 3rd degree, you'd have to suffocate, strangle, disfigure, or inflict physical injury, or you'd have to threaten or place the victim in fear that the victim or an individual known to the victim imminently with the subject of death, and or number 4, that you commit the crime while aided and abetted by another. So what she's done is she said, well, he might have accidentally smothered me. Number 2, what she has done is put me in fear.
Life. Right.
What he has done is put me in fear. Number 3, what he has done is with Mark Judge. Number 4. So 2, 3, and 4 all fit. So now we go to.
This was professionally written.
Yeah, it's perfect. And so now
Imagine
we go to whether or not he could be charged as an adult 35 years later. Assuming arguendo that we get past the fact that we don't know within a year when it happened. Assuming arguendo, we get past the fact that we don't know where it occurred. Assuming that we have any witness, which we don't have, as to we have no physical evidence, We have no witnesses. We have no concurrent utterances. We have no follow-up. We don't even have her saying to a classmate, boy, I'm sure not going to a party where that Kavanaugh guy is again. So all of that's out, okay,
Right.
for 35 years. So is it a repressed memory, or is she making this up? Or is it
Or is somebody else making it up for her?
or has she gotten mistaken identity? All of those things are possible. Let's go to the other piece, which has to do with whether or not Kavanaugh would be charged with this in Maryland court, even if he became an associate justice, which of course would be the ultimate.
Right. Let me just tell you, the reason I'm smiling over here
Yeah.
is not at, that it's a serious allegations, and the way the law is
Absolutely
phrased,
it is. Yeah.
and the way the law is phrased is even more terrifying. I'm smiling at the depths of the research you did here, and I'm imagining you're looking at the screen, reading the statute and the conditions, 1, 2, 3, 7,
Exactly.
8, C.
That I am.
And then shredding the whole discussion and showing out how every single element happens to be in this brief little note she drops to Feinstein.
Well,
so this is why I'm smiling, not at the substance of the claim.
So we can theoretically, let me get to another part of this Maryland statute.
Good. I'm going to smoke, but don't watch.
Yeah. All right. So
this is great.
We can get to a piece which has to do with whether or not he can be charged as an adult. First of all, is there a statute of limitations? And the answer is, as to sex crimes, there is not. So,
Really?
Yeah. Maryland has no statute of limitations for nothing.
And that's as of when? The no statute became functional in what, 2005?
Yeah.
So
So do we have ex post facto on it? That's the possibility, is that we end up with that problem. All right, so then you have, what I found fascinating is that some of these women came forward, these senators, and so we've got 4 women senators, right? We have Feinstein, which I give her credit that at least she said, I'm not sure it's true. At least she said that. And I hesitated to do it, blah, 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 both as a matter of confidence. Now, the fact that she didn't run it through Grassley and didn't ask for additional investigation.
And never mentioned it to Kavanaugh during a lengthy session privately in the office.
Yeah, or anything else. Now then you've got Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota and Kamala Harris from California, both of whom are former AGs and prosecutors, right?
Okay.
And they take this seriously. And Kamala Harris comes out and says, I believe her. Now, let me add to that another idiot. And I call these guys idiots, and I'll tell you why, is Richie Blumenthal from Connecticut.
He doesn't look well. He looks like a skeleton, doesn't he?
Well, the problem is he's even older than I am. That's first problem. So Richie Blumenthal, I did a little checking on little Richie Blumenthal to see how it is that a person on the Judicial Committee would say in a very unconstitutional way, even before there's a hearing, even before the defendant has the right to respond, I'm going to assume that this witness is telling the truth and the guy is the alleged perpetrator is absolutely guilty. So Richie Blumenthal says that. So this is an American attorney that went to undergrad at Harvard, went to law school at where? Give me one guess where he went to law school.
Yale.
Yes, you win. He went to Yale Law School. He was He was a Marine Corps sergeant. He was an attorney for the District of Connecticut, a federal attorney. He was in private practice. He was the Attorney General for 10 years of Connecticut. Hey, Connecticut, do you guys have any idea what you got for a senator? And so the deal is that this guy.
And he's not Catholic.
So we have 3 attorney generals. We have 3 serious lawyers. We have 3 people well educated in the law who are willing to come out and say, I believe a witness, having never met her themselves, having never looked at the facts themselves. And you got Mazie Hirano. I don't know what her deal is, from Hawaii. Guess what, folks? She's up. Pay attention. And she says to just shut up to men.
Yeah, I love that.
Shut up and step up. And then she also says, I believe her, not only she should be taken seriously, she should be believed. You must believe her. Well, if that were the case, then the Salem witch hunts would have been a cakewalk, right? The farmer walks in and says, that woman across the street down the way is a witch. I swear she's a witch. And 3 people in the audience say, I believe this farmer. He's telling the truth. So we boil her in oil. Why not? It's perfect.
Oh, they burn them at the stake there, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, some of them, you know, they put them in boiling water, and if they came up out of it and survived, then they were a witch. If they died, then they were innocent but dead.
And what would they do if they survived? Then they'd kill them?
All right, so let's go back.
Wait. If they survived the boiling water, what would they do if they survived? Then they'd kill them.
Then they have a mistake. So I find this fascinating. These guys came out and said, what possible benefit? I believe her because she is facing the gauntlet. She is going to be excoriated. She's going to be treated horribly. What would possibly drive somebody to come out there if it wasn't pure honesty? Well, so the first thing is the Me Too movement.
I can't imagine.
The first one is the Me Too movement, and she's a part of it. The second one is the liberal-oriented Democrats, and she aligns herself. She makes herself what's the lady that went against our other judge?
Against who?
The last time we did this.
Oh, yeah, Thomas.
Yeah. So
Anita Hill.
Anita Hill, you know, that made her famous, and she could write books and the rest of the stuff afterwards. All right. So what?
I don't know. You know, I remember that testimony. I mean, she was talking about the Coca-Cola.
Yeah, but she was talking about pubic hair and Coca-Cola.
On the Coca-Cola. I believed her testimony.
Yeah, that may be true. All right. So now we've got, what could she possibly benefit, right? So let me tell you how she benefits. I looked up the GoFundMe accounts for her, okay? And
I was going to say, you mentioned that yesterday, and you were on such a roll. I was going to say, well, what about her GoFundMe account?
All right, so let me tell you about her GoFundMe accounts. She probably has an attorney for free because this attorney, this Katz lady, is a civil rights lawyer that's been doing this for 100 years.
Should we ask Barsoomian? I think Barsoomian helped write that document.
Now, quit interrupting me. So on the GoFundMe sites, there are at least 3 that I've found so far. All right. One that's set up to be 175 grand. It's at 136 already. That was as of yesterday or early this morning. The second one was set up to be 175. It's already over $200,000. The third one is African Americans who believe her. It's at 50 grand. And there may be 3 or 4 or a half dozen others. And of course, as you know, the Soros bunch can finance stuff and get it through. Now, let me go to one other thing why she might possibly find this financially advantageous to do this. And that is, she works in some fashion with the folks that develop and produce RU-486. Now, I don't know what the medical term for it is, but simple enough. This is the morning after abortion drug.
Right.
And so is she going to get 10,000 or 100,000 or get to be the spokesperson for RU-487? Well,
or did she just get all the money from the 3 GoFundMes that we know now? I mean, that's a nice chunk. And
that's not bad. And
who says that can't be paid by one donor to make it look like it was chipped in by 100 people?
We have no idea because it's
the agency could do that, couldn't they?
Yeah, it's not a political campaign fund, so anybody could fund any amount they wanted to, and you could use as many phony names as you like.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a limit to contributions.
No.
Nobody wants to put 100 grand in there, they can.
Yeah, and they could write her a check and keep it off the GoFundMe site, not put it there at all.
That's true.
So this is, we don't like Kavanaugh, and I like Ford even less.
Don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
So you were on a roll there. You were saying as the spokesman for the morning after pill.
So let's take the other aspect of it, and that is that Kavanaugh's mother, a Maryland state judge, Martha, ruled in the Blasey Ford parents' home case and ruled against them, and they lost their home. So now we have.
They lost the house, but they did not. They lost the case. They did not lose the house.
Yeah.
Now, I don't understand how that works. They
Yeah.
lose a foreclosure proceeding, but the house wasn't taken.
Yeah, so
That's
they
what
put it, I think they put it in trust or whatever. And then you've got all the finance and funding stuff that is Soros linked. So yeah, there's nobody
Like
has,
what? What do you got that Soros linked to?
well,
That's it.
that some of the financial stuff that's lined up for this, some of these women's groups and the rest of that are all Soros linked. And I'm not an expert on that part. So let me not get into the weeds on it and act like
There was a link I posted last night's video I did that was, I don't remember how long, it was a short clip. It was an audio tape of a woman named Seidman or Seidman, Sidman, who is a campaign kind of publicist coach discussing how to take Kavanaugh down. And she is purportedly the coach for this Ford. Interesting.
all right, so let's add
I'll
one more.
send you that link.
Let's add one more piece while we're adding it. And that is, first of all, that document has not been fully released, right?
Right.
The letter has not, it has only been released in a redacted form. So it's not been fully released. Whether it only included Mark Judge or not, other things I don't know.
We don't even know that.
All right, so no, we don't. But Judge has come in and said, no, I don't have any recollection of that. It didn't happen. I don't want to testify. All I know is that it didn't happen. I have no recollection of it at all. I think it's fair to say that that you might not be able to get any kind of sexual assault on it at all. I don't know when it was that you went to a party and you had your buddy pile on while you were trying to get a girl's clothes off, right? And when does that turn out to be a sexual assault case? It seems to me that not to suggest that you might know that, Mr. Farmer, but the point of the matter is if you've got a guy if you've got two guys in a room, first of all, you shouldn't have two guys in a room anyway. Secondly, the second guy that's supposedly aiding and abetting you should not be piling on you and then wrestling with you on the ground. That would show a lack of purpose toward doing anything to Ms. Blasey, right?
Okay, you lost me. So you're saying that the second guy was wrestling with the first guy?
Second guy, apparently, the way I read the letter, on at least one occasion and maybe on a couple occasions, the second guy piled on. So this is more like one of those grade school playground pile-ons,
Right.
where everybody's seeing who can squeeze the kid on the bottom. That's the first. And then these two guys, the way she got away, according to her story, the way she got away is that the two of them started wrestling with each other, fell on the floor, and she could get up and get out. So that
ran across the hall into the bathroom and locked the door.
So that goes to the purpose of what they were doing to start with. They obviously were not very purposeful if they got so distracted so easily that they fell on the floor wrestling. Were they ever attempting to be sexual? And who knows that? So,
right. But you're saying he came forward and he said, I have no recollection of that. That never happened. So we're assuming that was his name in there, but yet it's not been released.
Well, it's been released through other sources, but and the other part is that apparently the description of this house that this woman, that Blasey Ford describes, matches another kid which was in the school system there.
Yeah.
This other kid, and I've seen pictures of them side by side.
Yeah, me too.
Kavanaugh and this other guy, and they look, I don't want to tell you they're identical by any means.
No, you could easily, very easily, not know which one was who.
If you watch the two of them walk by, you could say that they could easily be twins or fraternal twins.
Yeah, 2 minutes apart. You say, hey, didn't I just see you? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's distinctly possible. So without, I mean, it is possible that this is a very serious charge and that in fact it happened. And in fact, Kavanaugh is a slime ball that does it. Now, what has also been pointed out is that the typical recidivist rate for sexual assaulters, salt and peppers, it is something like 90%. And so if in fact this guy, Kavanaugh, assaulted her, there is a 90% likelihood that he would have done that sometime other in his life.
Right. It's also somebody else again. Good point.
Right.
Very good.
And so you've got 65 women that signed this thing and multiples others. There is some claim that Kavanaugh has a look he likes. He is appointed or hired lots of clerks, and that he likes that glamour girl look. And there's allegedly, for people who are going to interview him, they tell these women to look a certain way for him, and that is if that's true, I don't like that about Kavanaugh either. But if that's the case, then taking the worst case, that Kavanaugh likes this certain look around him, and that's what he's attracted to, and he hires those people, and he never messes with them, it hardly supports the recidivist part of this, does it?
Correct. And does she fit that look?
Maybe. Who knows? I don't know. It looks like Hicks, slender, very.
How about all this stuff could buy her a good slander and defamation suit by the redacted name and or Kavanaugh?
Yeah, there's no question about it. But the problem is, of course,
they got a few hurdles to get past.
Yeah. As a practical matter, as a prosecutor, if somebody came in to me and sat across the desk and say, I have this complaint I want to file, and they said, well, good, okay. Is this guy a resident of the state? Nobody was when this occurred. Okay, fair enough. I may have to extradite him from another state, but fair enough. So tell me the facts. Well, sometime in 1981 or 82, I was sexually assaulted. Well, can you tell me what day it was?
Yeah, can you narrow that down? Was it winter, summer, spring, fall?
Can you tell me what month it was?
Yeah.
Can you name other people besides this one guy who says, I've already checked on it, says he doesn't know anything about it?
Right. And where was it?
So
where did this happen? 37 years. How come you haven't mentioned this yet?
Christine, tell me what's the name of the hospital where you went to check on whether you'd been injured or not? Did you tell your parents? Can your parents confirm that you came home and said, by God, I'm not going to these parties with Kavanaugh anymore? Is that possible? So let me give you the most neutral.
Your friends. Yeah.
Let me give you the most neutral one, which is, yeah, your friends. Who else in that group did you talk to? Were there any other girls?
Yeah.
How inebriated were you? Was it 4 boys and you? Are you the only girl that was there?
Interesting.
Yeah, nobody's asked that question at all.
Yeah.
How old? Yeah. How old were the boys that were there? Can you tell me at what time you went home? How did you? That there has been nobody, and apparently she doesn't know how she got there. She says she went home.
Right.
Is that 5 blocks she walked?
So the question is this intended to be a distraction from the DOJ and the FBI and the, what are we calling this? The declassification order? Number one. Second question is this really the PSYOP that I mentioned before about trying to posture Kavanaugh as the victim? So nobody's really going to look at his record, but instead this is the distraction. We're going to say, oh my goodness, you can't allow this to happen. So thank God. It's kind of like the movie Clockwork Orange, right? Where our boy Alex is a raving sociopath, violent rapist, maniac. Then he is treated by the government. He is incapable of fighting back and he's abused. And it turns out that the government now is the bad guy for doing this to poor little Alex. But at the end of the movie, he's cured because he tries to kill himself. So the shock of impact leaping out of the window cures him, and he's all broken up. And now you're happy, because of the way it was narrated. It was brilliant art. So at the end of it, you're like, oh, good, he's cured. And then you walk out of the theater and you're going to the car and you say, wait a minute, why am I happy that this raving sociopath, psychopath is back to normal again? See, so are they trying to pull the same game here and say, okay, we want Kavanaugh to be the victim. We want to make him not be the victim. And he passes with flying colors or a tight vote, lots of drama, all by not looking at his underlying globalist support record.
Yeah, I think there's So the Democrats don't want to go after him for the substantive issues because they get paid the same way. They get the same benefits
Right.
from corporate backing and from Soros.
Right. And if they exposed all that, well, then they're shooting themselves in the foot, aren't they?
And the Republicans are doing the same thing. The Republicans say, well, gee, we've got a constitutionalist judge who's going to be conservative. He's going to get on there with Roberts and Gorsuch and our boy Thomas, and we're going to have a 5-4 court. And boy, and you know, he's opposed to abortion rights and the rest of that, even though he wouldn't say so. You know, they're never going to say so in these confirmation hearings because that feeds fodder to the Democrats. So, you know, he's going to pick the globalist side. He's going to pick the corporate side. He's going to pick. He is not going to benefit the little people. He's not going to protect constitutional rights.
He's not going to protect clean air or clean water or groundwater.
No. Yeah, no.
Corporate business as usual.
He's not going to do anything that the little people want him to, but he will use the Constitution to the advantage of the corporations at the expense of the little people.
Right.
Sounds like a couple of Democrats talking right now, you know. And
well, you know, listen, we were trained to argue both sides of the case, right?
Well, I'm also a civil libertarian, and so there are times when I put the Democrat hat on because they are looking at individual rights, and it doesn't happen anymore, right?
Yeah, but don't forget the Republican mantra, garbage, has always been independent, you know, personal liberties. They want states' rights, personal liberties, and fiscal responsibility. That was their happy thing. And, you know, Bush Cheney managed to wreck that.
Yeah, it's all gone.
2 tax cuts, 2 wars, right? You had the Terry Schiavo case, which was literally an act of Congress to override the state law. And then you had the Patriot Act, and there goes your individual liberties. So how does this fit?
Yes, we have no constitutional rights.
So technically, the Republicans and the Democrats both want civil liberties. I see.
Well, they don't even do, and this goes to your point about asking real questions. They didn't even go to that issue, any of them, Republicans or Democrats,
right?
Except they fished around the right of privacy and the abortion stuff, and they fished around the Second Amendment, which is keeping guns, and that's it. That's basically it. So,
yeah. So why did they do that? Who told them to do that?
Because
was puppet masters, the agency.
I'm going to post my Kavanaugh comments from a previous video in both this one and the last one, because I watched a body language guy, and the body language guy said Trump doesn't like this guy. He liked Gorsuch, but he doesn't like this guy.
Right.
And he was forced into it. Well, I
agree. I believe
that. Say that if in fact he was forced into it, that doesn't tell us much about the proactive independence of the clean the swamp guy. It tells us that there is a globalist background to Trump that is being fed through Trump to pick out guys like Kavanaugh.
Well, don't jump to that conclusion. There's several steps required to get there, and there's an alternative turn that could be made. And that turn is he could have been threatened.
Yeah,
they could have said,
there's
put this guy up or ...
another hypothetical piece to that, and that is to say he's taking the swamp out, but he's got to put Kavanaugh in, because if he puts an independent guy in, then he tips off both the globalists and the non-globalists that he's in fact going to take them down. Now, the fact that they don't seem to know that he's going to do that, and that by him appointing Kavanaugh distracts everybody in the world from what you and I know, is a stretch if you really want to think about it.
Yeah, and this drama with the pop goes the whistle at the last minute distracts everybody from everything else to make sure we make him pass so he's not a victim. I'm telling you, I believe that this is a psyop right here. So nobody's going to look at that. They didn't ask him crap about his rulings and his decisions. The same way they didn't ask what's her name, the head of the CIA, about extraordinary rendition about MK Ultra on multiple levels and a zillion other nasty, what should we call it, dark ops of the agency.
Well, it is problematic all the way across the board, and there is not any real light in the tunnel yet.
No, because they're all compromised and they're all being controlled and manipulated on whatever means they're using, but it seems to be pretty effective.
If you take Kavanaugh out, the downside of it is that you end up with the whole election going back to whether or not a Supreme Court justice is going to be appointed that satisfies the Senate. And to whom is that an advantage? Is that an advantage? And that's another issue, which is interesting. If they blow,
I'm glad this is a short video. Go ahead.
blow Kavanaugh out of the water, are the Republican voters going to be more inclined to vote Republicans in because they can't let the Democrats decide who's going to be on the Supreme Court?
Right. The other side of that argument is I don't think it's the Republicans or the Democrats that decide this election. It's the independents. There are more independents than the Republicans and Democrats combined, as I understand that. Right? You say you've got, what, 20 and 20 and 60. Interesting.
Yeah, well, here's the other part, and this goes back to my comment about idiot Richard Blumenthal. No apologies to anybody in Connecticut, by the way, and certainly no apology to idiot Blumenthal. Is that, and this goes to Kamala Harris and also to what the hell's her name, Klobuchar or whatever it is, Klobuchar. You know, these are former attorneys general.
Right.
How the hell do you get to a place when you swear to the Constitution where you're willing to say before you even meet this person, before you ever, a word comes out of her mouth in your presence, that you believe her? How is it that keeps your objectivity intact? And how?
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, at this point, they're not playing attorney general. At this point, they're playing senator.
No, well, they're on the Judiciary Committee because they are experienced, practiced lawyers. They can't.
Right. Prosecutors. Right. AGs.
Yeah, well, or attorneys in general.
Yeah. Sure.
You know.
No, you make a good point, man. That's a great point. I mean, how the hell do they come off saying, well, I believe her or she should be believed? Really? We haven't heard any friggin' testimony. We've got a letter that's been redacted that wasn't introduced, and nobody's heard a damn thing out of her mouth, yet she should be believed. Forget due process. He's guilty.
You tell me why anybody, and I think this is a rational question, why any male or any rights-thinking woman would vote for somebody who says they believe a person about his testimony before he gives it.
Well, I'll give you two reasons why that's happening. I'm going to send you the link to the woman who is the coach for Ford, and you'll see it's a whole plan to take down Kavanaugh.
But my point is, if you go back to this, as a voter, I'm going to go down and pull for a vote or mark a vote, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to vote somebody in who is supposedly going to represent my constitutional rights. But if a woman shows up, a Me Too woman shows up and points fingers at me and says, this guy sexually assaulted me behind the Safeway in 1985, she is going to be believed.
Right.
And I am going to spend $10,000 to $50,000 defending myself, even if I wasn't in the state at the time. You know, if you take that lacrosse team that was charged with assault, the only way,
up in Duke lacrosse, right, in North Carolina.
The only way those guys got out of it is this woman claimed that this one lacrosse player, or the major reason is that this one lacrosse player that she identified as raping her was at that time getting money at an ATM where he was photographed, where on film, or they might all have spent 10 or 20 or 30 years in jail and be classed as a sexual predator for the rest of their lives.
Exactly. And on top of that, you had that stupid district attorney up there who was running in Durham, white boy trying to get the black vote, and he wanted to be protecting the poor black folk from the rich white kids. So he withheld major exculpatory evidence showing their innocence and DNA evidence. It said it's not there. And there was other DNA evidence there, but none of these guys.
I remember that.
And he got disbarred for that and was actually sentenced to jail for like 4 or 5 days. He should have done a whole lot more time than that.
So our great 4 female lawyers on the Judiciary Committee of the United States Senate who step up and say, 3 of them say, I believe her before she even testifies. And then idiot Blumenthal steps up and says, yeah, I believe her too. You know, the guy's nutted. The guy is a unit. And basically what it says is that, men, be prepared. You vote these people in, you could find yourself in jail for 20 or 30 years because somebody charges you with a sexual crime. And just being a Me Too deal doesn't make it right.
Exactly.
We have
Trump even said that. He said, look, I mean, you can make the accusations, but you're innocent until proven guilty, period. Right? I mean, look at all the crazy women that came out and alleged this, that, and the other thing before the election. He said they're all lying. You know, whatever happened to all that nonsense?
There are only 17 reasons, and we've now gone through them, why her testimony might not be accurate. And so
I have some questions. So clearly an issue of fact.
Well, and what's more than that, as a prosecutor, where you couldn't get to the month, much less the day. You know.
Oh, come on, the date, the time, the place, the whole thing. It's ridiculous.
Formal prosecution says date, time, and place. You don't even have, you have no obligation to plead to something where the crime that has been allegedly committed is reasonably defined, so you know what to defend yourself.
Let's see if there's a prosecutor who would take this case. Send it to a grand jury.
One of the women, I think it was Harris.
See if a grand jury comes back and returns an indictment.
One of the women, I think it was Harris, that was asked, would you prosecute this case? And you know what she did? It's not about prosecuting. It's about whether this guy's to be believed. It's about believability. Okay, well, fair enough. You know,
yeah, but if she said yes, then she loses the votes of all the men in her state.
Yeah.
Good point. All right, well, listen, I think we're good. I think we've shot enough holes in the possible argument that may be made here if she decides to show up and testify.
It could be a real circus this week, and if Grassley doesn't keep a lid on it and keep it in some fashion ordered and gets his cartilaginous spine up, it could be a real mess. So, all right.
Is she coming in to testify or not?
But I still don't know, and I think
we don't know.
And I think the jury will be out till the appointed moment when she's supposed to show up.
All right.
So
good job, Froggy. Nice work on that one, and I'm glad I kept my mouth shut.
Get your thumbs up.
Leave a comment and give it a thumbs up, and as they say in that high squeaky voice, well now, subscribe. All right, we're out.
All right.
Good.